So a rational exponent means, ma'am, can you hold your head up for me, please? Thank you. Is when you have a exponent that is a fraction. So right here, whenever you have an exponent that's a fraction, that means that you can write it with a radical. That's what that means. So I'm going to explain this rule. I think it's, so this is with variables. I think this is kind of confusing, but you can go ahead and write this down. And you can write that down. But we're going to do, I'm going to do it with numbers because I feel like the letters might be a little confusing. So when you see an exponent that's a fraction, that means that we can write it with a radical. So whatever number, I like to call this the elbow. Whatever number is in the elbow of the radical, that's the number that's in your denominator. I might shorten, I'm going to actually shorten homework 4. So I'm going to cut a couple of those questions. And I'll let you know tomorrow which questions I'm cutting. So what I mean by this is, so let's say, for example, you have the square root of 25. So the square root of 25, if it's a square root, that's the only time we don't put a number in the elbow. So a square root has an invisible 2 right there in the elbow. And the exponent on 25 is 1 if you don't see an exponent. So that means that you could actually write, instead of saying the square root of 25, you could say 25 to the power of 1/2. That's the exact same thing. If you were to type in your calculator 25 and hit the exponent key and put 1/2, you will get 5. If you were to write, for example, the cube root of 7 squared, you could write that as 7 to the power of what? 2/3 or 3/2? 2/3, right? Because the number in the elbow would be your denominator. But also similarly, remember that instead of writing it this way, you could also put the parentheses around it and put the exponent on the outside. And that still means the same thing. So the number in the denominator is always what's in the elbow. But the power could be attached to the term or it could be outside of the term. So what we're going to do is simplify some square roots and cube roots and fourth roots. So go ahead and take a moment, and these go pretty fast. Copy down 1, 2, and 3. We're just going to simplify those together. Now, simplifying is not the same as solving. Okay, solving, we include plus or minus. But for simplifying, we only include the positive, which is called the principal root. So when we're solving an equation like we had in our homework, we would put plus or minus. Like, for example, if we were solving x equals the square root of 49, we would say x equals positive or negative 7. But we're not solving, we're just simplifying. So I'm only looking for the positive answer. So first thing first, we can write this as 49 to the power of 1/2. And what is, if you were to build a cake, you would have 2 7s. So the answer is simply 7. That's the answer to number 1. Simple. Square root of 49, 7. Now, if there's a 3, that means I'm not looking for 2, I'm looking for a triplet. So if I were to build a cake with 27, and I divide it by 3, I'm not looking for a set of twins anymore, because there's not a 2 in the elbow, there is a 3. So does everyone see that I actually have one set of triplets? Just one set. And that one set is a set of 3. So this would equal 3. And again, to write this with a fraction, it would be 27 to the 1/3. That's what that would equal. Okay, so this is really, really important. I need everybody's ears to open. You will always take a negative out of the square root. You never leave a negative under a radical, okay? So here, there's a -8, but there's really 2 answers, okay? What I really have under this square root is the cube root of -1, and then I also have the cube root of 8. We have to look at those separately. So the square root of -1 is I, or imaginary. But the cube root of -1 is -1. So let me explain that. If you type in your calculator, I want you to type in -1 times -1 times -1. If you type in -1 times -1 times -1, or -1 to the power of 3, you're going to get -1. So the cube root of -1 is actually -1. It's not imaginary. Now, if you were to build a cake with the 8, though, you get a set of triplet, what? 2s. So that means the cube root of 8 is 2. So my answer, my final answer would be -1 times 2, which would be -2. That would be my answer. And I know I'm all over the screen, y'all. Sorry. That would be my 3 answers. So again, this is really important. I need to make sure you all understand. I'm actually going to go back and explain it a different way, because, you know, I really am in here trying, because I want y'all to get the credit that you all want to get. So in a simplified manner, let's just make this simple. If you have, and if the number in the elbow is even, okay, that's kind of messy. Let me do that again. Try to make it fit. So if there is an even number in the elbow, I'm going to make a big old exaggerated radical, and it's a -1, the -1 has to stay. So If there's an even number, a 2, a 4, a 6, a 8, or 10, then we cannot take it out. We're just going to leave it there. We're just going to leave it. We're not going to do anything with it. But if there is an odd number in the elbow, there'll never be a 1. There's no such thing as, that's the lowest you can have is a 2. So if there's a 3, a 5, a 7, or a 9, then it actually comes out and becomes a -1. So this is the simplified rule to kind of remember as we are doing our radicals in this chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the next 3. And I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but we'll just copy them down. So copy down 4, 5, and 6. So I think, who builds cakes? I feel like that, wait, who would rather me build a cake or who wants me to just break it apart? Build a cake. I feel like that's what we are. Okay. So we have a 4, which means I'm not looking for twins. I'm not looking for triplets. I'm looking for quadruplets. So take the 16 and build your cake, y'all. When you build your cake, you're dividing it by 2s, 3s, 5s, and 7s. So we're going to take that 16. Let me go ahead and bring that up a little higher. And we're just going to start. The lowest prime number is 2. I want you to take 16 and keep dividing it by 2 until you get your birthday candle at the top. So you're going to take 2 into 16. Then you're going to take that number and divide it by 2. You're just going to keep dividing it by 2. Until you get your 1 at the top. So, what do we have a set of quadruplets of? 2. So that would be my answer. I didn't have anybody left out, so the answer to number 4 is simply 2. Yes, Kaylee. You mean take the square root of 16 twice? You could, but that's not always going to work, though. Now, what you could do, the same way that I make my perfect squares, is you could figure out off to the side what 2 to the 4th is, 3 to the 4th, 4 to the 4th. You can always make your list and then take that list and see what goes into the number. You could do that. But it's not going to always be it's not going to always be squares because the number in the elbow is not a 2. All right, so 5 and 4 actually go together. But the only difference is that 5 has a negative. So we have to take away that negative. You always separate the negative. Now we've already done this question. So we already know that the answer to this is 2. We don't need to make it again. But what did I say about a negative under an even index? Do we keep it or do we take it out? Keep it. So we have to keep that, and I'm going to put that in the back. So my final answer for number 5 would be 2 times the 4th root of -1. We don't change it to an I because we're not solving. We would just keep it there. All right, last one, variables. How do we do variables? So this is, I like to think of it as people. If I have, I'm going to do it 2 different ways. If I have 8 people in my class and I want to make groups of 4, How many groups of 4 can I make with 8 people? 2. All right, here's the longer way, which, again, I got kids at all different levels. Ain't no shame in your game. You don't, some people get a little faster, and that's okay because it's fine. If you were to create 8 X's on your paper and circle groups of 4, do you all see that I have 2 groups? That is why my answer is simply X squared. This number is how many groups I made. And I made 2 groups. All right.